This is the English Language Proficiency Assessment Screener informational webinar. Welcome to Part 2 of the webinar, which concerns updates for the coming school year. If you are looking for introductory information on the ELPA screener, please see Part 1 of this webinar, which is available on the ODE website. Currently, there are two versions of the Language Use Survey available for district use, the Bridge and the Legacy versions. ODE does not intend to preserve two versions of the Language Use Survey indefinitely. However, plans to create a single statewide LUS were put on hold as a result of the COVID pandemic. We expect the resumption of this project to be well publicized and to involve a coordinated statewide outreach. This slide contains reminder information concerning ODE's comprehensive guidance administering the ELPA screener and summative in 2020-21. Districts have already been consulting and using this guidance for several months. For the purposes of this webinar, the most important part of this guidance concerns the 2021 unique screening opportunity. All students who were eligible to participate in ELPA summative testing in 2021, but did not, are eligible for unique screening. A student who opened a summative opportunity is considered a participant, even if they did not complete the test. There is no need to consult historical records for testing in 2020 or before to determine unique screening eligibility. The 2021 unique screening opportunity operates very similarly to the 2020 opportunity. The major difference between the two is that the window will be longer in 2021. Districts need to screen students at their enrolled grade. For unique screening purposes, a student's grade changes during the yearly system rollover in late July. For example, let's imagine a student enrolled in 7th grade during the 2020-21 school year and who is eligible for unique screening. This student would be tested on the 7th grade form if they test prior to the yearly system rollover. The same student would be tested on the 8th grade form if they test after the yearly system rollover. During the spring 2021 ELPA summative testing season, ODE guidance indicated that parent consent must be obtained before testing any student on the ELPA summative, regardless of instructional model. The key phrase was, "Do not test without consent." For unique screening, there is no requirement to obtain consent before testing. Guidance does indicate that districts should be in contact with families, both informing them of district intent to screen and that they have a right to decline unique screening if they wish. However, if it is not possible to establish contact with a parent or guardian in a timely manner, or if the parent or guardian does not provide a clear indication of whether they consent to or decline unique screening, the district may decide to move ahead with screening in order to ensure that appropriate language services can be provided to the student in the coming school year. ODE guidance does not provide a specific timeline beyond which a district may or must test without consent. Different districts will have different testing loads, and a reasonable pace for one district may be unmanageable for another. Since the purpose of unique screening is to ensure appropriate language services for the student, districts who have unused testing capacity may wish to consider federal identification timelines as a possible outer limit on delayed testing. ODE guidance does not set out a required testing quota or rate, but rather that districts should test students as is feasible according to their local context. This slide contains another reminder from guidance on administering the ELPA screener and summative in 2020-21. While unique screening and standard screening have different policy foundations, they are both administered on the same instrument and are identical experiences from the student's point of view. In the uncommon case where a student qualifies for screening under both these policies, districts may choose which variety of screening to use. There is no difference in the outcome of standard versus unique screening for remotely identified English learners who score not proficient. For remotely identified English learners who score proficient, standard and unique screening differ in terms of which code is used to report the outcome in EL data collections and whether the student enters monitoring status. A remotely identified English learner who is proficient after initial screening does not enter monitoring status. A remotely identified English learner who is proficient after unique screening does enter monitoring status. For a list of codes and when to use each, please contact Kim Miller on our Federal Systems team. Administering the ELPA screener and summative in 2020-21 was written to directly address ongoing impacts of the COVID pandemic. As the effects of the pandemic subside and evolve, the 2020-21 guidance will phase out. The next 3 slides will explain the order of the phase-out. Currently, we expect health and safety conditions to improve, such that in the 2021-22 school year, even if some students are receiving instruction through distance learning, newly arriving students can be screened in person. Therefore, provisions for remotely identifying newly arriving students should no longer be necessary. However, some students may have unresolved presumptive EL status from the 2020-21 school year. If possible, districts should resolve these students' EL status through the use of the ELPA screener prior to December 17, 2021, which is also the end of the unique screening window. Students whose EL status is not resolved by this date will participate in the 2022 ELPA summative testing. Their ELPA summative result will determine their final EL status going forward. 2020-21 guidance made no changes to the standard screening process, so that language will not need to phase out. The guidance did contain reminder text about a scoring change for the future K screener form, but that change was not made as a result of the pandemic and will be continued in future years. The guidance contained suggestions and brainstorming ideas for maximizing health and safety during test administration. None of these suggestions were requirements and therefore will not phase out. The ELPA summative window closed on April 30th, 2021. The summative portion of the 2020-21 guidance is no longer relevant and has already phased out. Unique screening guidance will remain in effect through the end of the unique screening window, which is December 17th, 2021. The unique screening portion of the 2020-21 guidance will phase out at that time. Data and reporting codes referred to in the 2020-21 guidance will remain in place so that districts can accurately record and report student EL status and test scores. On this slide, we quickly check in with progress on the development of the ELPA, which is designed for students with the most significant cognitive disabilities. The groundwork has largely been laid for this test. Item writing will begin this summer. After the test design is complete, the consortium will conduct a limited pilot, followed by an operational field test, which means that a full implementation is still at least 2 years away. The information on this slide is not new or updated, but the system suffered significant disruption from the pandemic, and we have reason to believe that the guidance on this slide may not have reached all districts when the policy was first implemented. The future K screener form should be used by all newly arriving students who are testing prior to January 1st of their kindergarten year. This includes students who are being screened during a kindergarten roundup type event, but it also includes students who arrive partway through their kindergarten year. For example, a pre-kindergarten student who is being screened in June tests on the future K form. A kindergarten student who first arrives in late November and who is therefore already receiving kindergarten instruction also tests on the future kindergarten form. A kindergarten student who arrives in February tests on the grade K form, not the future K form. ELPA 21 has modified the scoring for the future K form of the ELPA screener. In previous years, students testing on the future K form were considered proficient if they scored a 3 or higher in non-exempt reading and writing domains, and 4 or higher in non-exempt speaking and listening domains. Beginning on March 1st, 2021, students testing on the future K form are considered proficient if they score a 3 or higher in all non-exempt domains. These new scoring rules are automatically applied to ISRs generated on and after August 3rd, 2021. Districts needed to manually apply the correct proficiency rules to the student's domain profile for ISRs generated between March 1st and July 16th, 2021. In the 2021-22 school year, the Future K and Grade K screener forms will have separate individual student reports. These reports will be retrieved from the same place using the same procedure as in prior years. Neither students nor districts should notice much of a difference between these reports. In the past, I have mentioned new items under development for the ELPA screener. These items were not field tested in 2020-21, so they will not be operational in 2021-22. As stated in ELPA screener training materials, the ELPA screener is automatically submitted after a certain amount of time. The intent of automatic submission is to ensure that districts still receive a score if a student is unable to complete screening for whatever reason. This auto-submit window was extended from 7 days to 14 days due to the complicated nature of screening during the pandemic. ODE had originally planned to return to 7 days after the July system rollover. However, feedback from districts during the May ELPA Screener informational webinar indicated that the 14-day window was a desired and useful feature. No state or federal regulation governs auto-submission for ELP screening instruments, so we will be retaining this 14-day window going forward. In prior school years, ELPA screener scores were retrieved from the state testing portal using the online reporting system known as ORS. This system transitioned to the centralized reporting system, or CRS, after the yearly system rollover in July. In addition to some cosmetic differences, CRS incorporates new functionality. A version of CRS was already deployed for the Smarter Interim suite of assessments, so if you have retrieved scores through the Interim Centralized Reporting System button, you are already familiar with CRS. Existing screener data will be transferred to CRS. No historic data will be lost. Scores for screeners taken on or after August 3rd will be reported through CRS only. They will not be available in ORS. Cambium Assessment will offer a CRS training in August with a focus on retrieving ELPA screener scores. Thank you for your attention. At this point during the live webinar, time is made available for questions and answers. Those questions, along with their answers, are recorded in the Informational Webinar Q&A document located next to the link for this slide deck. This slide includes contact information for two primary sources of help with ELPA screener administration or score retrieval. This concludes Part 2 of the ELPA informational webinar. Please don't hesitate to contact me with questions or concerns or suggestions about how I might improve this presentation.